Good afternoon and welcome to Financial Management 101. This is the opportunity to give you a little bit of a preview and overview of financial management, one of the newer modules in ServiceNow. And we're going to look a little bit in both Geneva and Helsinki because there are some differences. And you might have some decisions to make about which version you want to go live in. We'll talk a little bit about why financial management and the kinds of questions that you can answer with this. And we will also talk a little bit about the beginnings of how to do configuration. This is the first in a series of 3 webcasts. The next one will be on the details of getting into allocations and how to do the configuration and programming for those allocations. And then we will talk a little bit about app TCO at that point. And then in the third one, we'll do some advanced with multiple models in the system and look at how you do actuals and budget variance within the system. I want to encourage you to post questions out on community. You can do it during the session today, or you can do it even after the session. We'll keep watching and answering and getting some good discussion going out in community. A little bit about Thavron before we get started. Thavron Solutions is a ServiceNow partner. We're an implementation and technology partner. And we have been doing IT financial management and business service portfolio management for a very long time. If you look at the collective history of the principals in the company, it's been several decades of work in this area. We're excited to have ServiceNow have an offering in this area and to be working with customers in the platform. We found some real advantages for people who are already using this for project or CMDB or ticketing and being able to just in an integrated way leverage that data with their financials for insights. So what is the financial module and why would you want to do this? This is an instance that's running in Geneva right now. And when I search for financials, you can see the different sections here that come up for the financial management module. And one of the things that we brought up here is the CIO dashboard. And the executive view is one of the critical ones. This is a great way to get ServiceNow out of operations and up into the boardroom, because CIOs and IT executives are really needing to have cost transparency. That is, they need to be able to talk to the business about the things that are happening and where their IT dollars are being spent. And so you can see this out-of-the-box dashboard nicely comes with financial information, and you can start to talk by business unit or by business service. You could dive down into more detail, but this is where the conversation at that CIO level is going to start. Being able to talk in business terms with their peers about where IT dollars are being spent. It also has an operations red-green chart as well as a project. These will automatically populate as long as you're using incidents and the projects modules. If you're not, these can be configured to not show or to input data from other systems. So that executive perspective is important. It's also important, if you look at one of the other reports that's here in this financial overview, to be able to have control internally and understand what's driving costs within IT. And so for the services that you're offering, you want to be able to see the breakdowns, being able to know how much you're spending on development versus design versus software licensing, how much of it is infrastructure versus labor, right? And you could do that at the level of what IT is doing, or the services level, or some people call this towers. You can also get that breakdown by buckets or that financial area, right? So the things you might be familiar with thinking about: hardware, capital, expenses, maintenance, licensing, right? So all of these are breakdowns from a financial perspective. So regardless of how you want to slice the data, you can get that perspective in here to help you manage IT better internally, whether you're an executive or a service owner, and to be able to make good priority decisions based off of data. It's also important to be able to see trending. It's been a surprise as we've talked with more and more companies over the years that it continues to be a challenge for people to see their total cost trending easily. A lot of companies put their general ledger information into multiple systems. You might have more than one GL system, especially if there have been several mergers or acquisitions, or if you're an international company. And getting all of that data into a single place and being able to see the totals is a real challenge for a lot of companies. And within the financial management module, it's incredibly simple. You could do the imports of all of those mapped into the system, and we'll show you that in just a little bit. It merges them together. This also allows you to do things like bringing budgets and actuals into the system and being able to see those side by side. So really, really nice tool, and to see the trending over time, again, to make those priority decisions. Excuse me. So we want to talk a little bit about the core of the application. And the core of the application actually resides in the workbench, which I'm going to bring up here. And again, this is Geneva. And the workbench has a configuration session. And in many companies, you're actually going to want to make sure that creating detailed allocation lines is on. This is going to allow you to pull in lots of detailed parameters from your general ledger by vendor, by location, by cost center, all kinds of things, and slice and dice that information all the way through your model at that level. And it's as simple as turning it on here and then rerunning your allocations. I'm going to turn this off for now because it just makes things perform a little quicker for what we're doing. You have the opportunity to set your currency. You also have a place where you can set your fiscal calendar. This is a one-time event, right? So once you set your fiscal calendar, you're not going to make changes to it ongoing. So it's important to know that you're doing this correctly in the first place. And so in Geneva, if we go into administration and select the fiscal calendar, those are very simple interface. You can set what your units are, whether they're quarters or months or weeks, and you can see that this has already been set and calculated, so it's not going to let me change it. When you're doing the first time setup, you can go in. You can say what month you start on. So do you start on your fiscal year in January or July or October or wherever you set, and what year you're going to be starting this with, what your end year you're going to be ending it with, what's the day of the month that you start your fiscal calendar with, and then you can see this demonstrates the first day of the month. In Helsinki, this is a little bit different. So one of the first differences you'll notice is that here everything is loaded under financials, and in Helsinki it's under cost transparency. And again, I'm going to go to the fiscal calendar, and here I have some new options. So if you are a company that has an odd fiscal calendar, especially you'll see this frequently in retail, where you might have a 13-period calendar or a 445 or a 454, you will be able to set that up and select it here. Again, this is a one-time thing, so you're going to do this at the start before you do anything else. Generate your calendar. So know that if you are a company that needs not just a straight standard year, month, quarter calendar, and you need to set up some additional options, you're going to want to make sure that you're starting in Helsinki rather than Geneva. Okay, let me take you back into the workbench and in the configuration. In the configuration, right now our main cost model is the default cost model. This is the cost model that's going to populate in the out of the box reports. We don't have other models in this demo version set up, so we don't have any other options in here, but if we had multiple models, you could switch between those if you wanted to. If you have to go through, for some reason you're backing out, you're going to delete data for a certain segment or a certain cost model or a certain time period, you can also use this tool in here to do that rather than going into the back-end tables and running scripts and doing that. So this gives your financial management admin a little bit of control over the data without having to have admin controls to those tables. In Helsinki, if I pull up the workbench, I'm going to let this load for a minute, and we'll come back to it. So once configuration is done, you want to look at the main workbench. And the main workbench is really a lot like a wizard. It's going to walk you through the process of configuration step by step. It has a period where you can select which fiscal period you're going to be working in. When you're in the rest of the workbench, whatever you select here is the data that you're working on. So if you need to change time periods, you come back to your data definition, change your fiscal period, and you'll be in a new fiscal period for working. Again, you can also change which cost model you're working on if you have multiple cost models. And once you go into the other tabs here, that's the cost model that you'd be working on. Gives you a preview of your chart of accounts. We'll talk about that in just a second. And it'll give us a status of where our data is. So when you first load your financial data, it goes into the GL staged. And so you can see we have data in staged for all of these. Then we're going to go through a process called data cleansing. We'll show you that in a second. Once it's finished cleansing, then it's going to go into the cleansed. And then it gets groomed, and then we run allocations and get lines. So let me show you the chart of accounts. This is the tab where you actually edit the chart of accounts. So this is where you're actually building your model that shows how the data is going to flow. So you can see in this default model, there are two things at the bottom here. There's project information and IT shared services. So what we're saying is that we have financial data that we're going to put into financial buckets, things like software, hardware, labor, outside services, and we're going to then map those in the allocation setup over to different segments. So each of these layers is called a segment in the financial management module. And what we're saying is that there's some things that are called projects, which you're familiar with. IT projects usually use a significant portion of the IT budget. And then at this point they're saying shared services. This might be towers for you, it might be sub-towers, it might be some other term. This is generally things like compute, storage, end-user compute, help desk, things like that. So this is operational type activities. These are project type activities. And those are going to map up and combine to our business services. And then those are going to be consumed by different business units. I could edit this by clicking on the edit button. And if I wanted to say, I'm not going to load project data, I would drag it over here. And my hierarchy is changed. And so now I have only data going in for operational and not for project that flows up to business services and is consumed by business units. You'll see that there are additional segments available over here that I could map into this. So potentially I may have information about different departments and I want to map that in. And so just click and drag and it's going to add it into that hierarchy. I'm going to take that back out. In the same way, perhaps you have location information that you want to track. And you want to track it side by side with the operations. So just like we had a branch one before, we put it here, and this would give us the slice by location and by operational shared services. So it's a very easy drag and drop process, but what you do here has huge impact on how you build your allocations and what that cost transparency is going to look like and the types of unit rates you can calculate. And so this is a point where you kind of step outside of normal ServiceNow process of very agile build and fly. You really want to take some time, do some data discovery, and make sure that you've designed this outside of the system before you build this inside of the system, because the changes here can have a pretty big impact and can cause you to do significant rework if you get partway through and need to redo it. So I am going to take this back out, and we'll put project back in. And then talk about this. And yes, I don't need to change my hierarchy changes. Okay, so data cleansing. This is actually one of the most whiz-bang kind of features. We've worked with a lot of the out-of-the-box tools that are used for IT financial management or service costing, and this does things that none of the other tools do automatically. So in any of those other tools, you can set up scripting and programming to do this data cleansing, but this allows you to do some really nice things. And it's especially important if your financial data, which is what you're looking at here, right? So this is all the data that came in under GL Staged, and if that data came from multiple systems, or you've changed systems over time, you could have information that comes in that is not consistent. Sometimes it's just a matter of the fact that things get typed in by human beings and it's not from a drop-down, and they can come in differently. So for example, you can see that in this line, Bramisol Inc. is in this format, and Bramisol Inc. is in a different format in this line item. Now, if we were to do reporting by vendor, this would show up as two different vendors because it doesn't text match. But that's not what we want. We want to be able to see all of those Bramisol expenses all together. So by a really simple drag and drop, this now merged, and you can see it now shows up as another vendor merged. And if I click on this, it will show me the details of what's here. If for some reason I realize I made a mistake, I can very easily click on the minus symbol, and boom, it's undone. So I'm going to click this back so that we're merged here, maybe, unselect, click, merge. Okay. So another way to find things is to do search. So for example, Oracle. And if I type in Oracle, you can see I get 3 line items here. So it's in 3 different ways. And it might be that the fact that this is Oracle America is significant. And perhaps Oracle America is who you do a special type of application for. Let's say it's potentially where you're doing your HR type of Oracle. And the Oracle and Oracle Inc. is actually how it comes in on the invoices for all of your enterprise Oracle databases. And those are expenses you actually want to keep separate. So you could decide that you want to just combine these two and keep this other one separate, right? So you can make those decisions. You can decide which ones have significance. Again, this is where understanding your design up front before you start this configuration is so important, and that's why it's really important that as you go through this implementation, the vendor who's working with you spends some time to really understand your organization and your goals and helps you design that model to meet those goals. Once you've made those changes, you're going to go through and click Cleanse Data. Once I do this, it's going to schedule a process. We've only got a few things happening here, so I'm going to go ahead and run it because it's not going to take very long. And those changes that I just made by clicking and dragging without any scripting at all also get recorded in the system. So in future periods, when I look at the data, it will then make those same exact changes. So you can go in a one-time cleansing process up front and find those, and then you can do the drag and drop and have the system automatically create the scripting that you need to make sure that the data cleansing and merging happens correctly. You can do this by things other than vendors. Let me take this search out. And you could also do these by things like cost centers. This is really useful if you have a group that is merged, and in one financial period it has 2 different names, and then it gets merged together into a single entity, and you want to show that merged together consistently across time. You can also do this by location, and so one of the things that we've seen customers do is that location information, especially from different systems, often comes in differently. So you can see here this comes in as North America, whereas we have lines that come in as France and United Kingdom. And so they're at very different levels of granularity. And so you can also go in and change what this name is and not just do the merge, and change this to EMEA. And you could also change United Kingdom to EMEA. Right. And then because those names are the same, it automatically shows up as a single line item. And now I have North America and EMEA for my location reporting, but I can still see the original details. So that original information was not lost. This can be really powerful when your GLs are at different levels of granularity from different systems, which is a frequent thing that happens. So we love the data cleansing. It's a really, really powerful tool. It becomes part of your monthly operations, right? So past your initial configuration, you're going to have your monthly financials loaded after you do your monthly close, and you can either do that manually or you can set up an automated interface. And you're then going to come in and you're just going to check and do a quick eyeball on your data cleansing to make sure there's nothing new that's come in that you want to do a change on. And then you're going to look at your bucketing. So bucketing is where we take the information that's coming in the GL and map it to those general financial categories. Some people call this cost types. Some people call it cost pools. ServiceNow calls it cost buckets. You have these set standard within your company already 98% of the time. So we have seen an occasional odd customer who doesn't think of their financial information this way, but for the most part, if you talk to your corporate finance, this kind of a breakdown already exists, and they could even tell you which GL accounts map to which cost type. So most often, this mapping is done by GL account. You could use other information, but that's the most common way because it's a financial view of things. And I'm going to click up here, and I'm going to show you all the accounts, even the ones that have been bucketed. So you can see this was all of the different accounts that came in. So when you come over to this view, it's going to show you the information in the account. And if I don't know what's in there, I can click and it's going to show me the detailed GL line items that came in, so I can get some more information about this and make sure that I'm categorizing this the correct way. And then by a simple drag and drop again, you're going to drag it over. So let's look at this bucket, and I'm going to, I'm going to unallocate it. So you can see now that these light ones are the ones that are already allocated. Those are the ones that showed up when I came up to the setting and said, show me all the ones that are categorized in buckets as well. If I turn that off, you'll see I now have just this one showing up here that's not allocated anymore because I unallocated it. And that's hardware depreciation. And so we're going to click and drag over to hardware capital. And again, just like in data cleansing, the system records that, and so the next month when I bring financial information in, it's going to automatically put it into the right buckets for me. If there's an account that shows up that's never been mapped before, it will show up over in this list. So part of your monthly process will be to come in and check this account, make sure there's nothing over here that needs to be defined. And if there is, you just drag it over, and then we're going to run the bucketing. We'll do that in just a second. There also is the ability, we haven't done it here, but there's the ability to exclude some accounts from the cost model. So it may be that you are starting this and you say, hey, I want to start, but my project data is just really kind of iffy. And so all the financials related to projects, I'm just going to exclude it from the cost model for right now, and we're not going to deal with projects. Or maybe you say, I want to concentrate just on infrastructure and not on applications, or you're tackling just a certain segment of your organization to start with. Then you can go into those accounts and exclude them so that when we go into allocations, they won't show up. They're still in the system, so you can continue to mature and grow your model as you clean up your data through time. But you will not have to do the reload of data in order to do that. And you can go in at any point in time and see what it is you've excluded and where you should set those priorities. So again, we made some changes here. The system's going to force us to do bucketing before we can go over and take a look at allocations. So I'm going to run that. It'll take just a second to do that. I'm going to check and see if the workbench over in Helsinki has come up again. It is not. We're going to kill this tab and try that one more time. See what that system's doing. Okay, so we've run bucketing over here. I'm back over in Geneva now, over in our workbench. So we created our chart of accounts. We did some data cleansing and collapsed some locations and some vendors. And we've looked at the bucketing process. Now, you can do much more detailed bucketing, and as we get into scripting in the next set of web shows that we're doing in this 3-part series, we'll go into advanced allocations and show you how you can do some scripting here as well. But then we want to look at allocations. So we're going to load the allocation tab here, and you'll see that what you see here mimics the cost hierarchy that you had, right? So we had IT shared services and project down here at the bottom. Those fly up to business services, which go up to the business units. Now, the really awesome thing about doing this in ServiceNow is that if you already use ServiceNow for your CMDB and you have your business services set up, it's going to automatically pull those in. So that integration happens automatically. You're going to see all those business services that you have set up in your CMDB showing up here in your segment for creating allocations. Same thing with business units. If you've already defined business units and those are functional, then those are going to pull through. Same thing with projects, right? You don't have to go in and manually set these up. You're going to be able to leverage the information that you have in other ServiceNow modules automatically. We could get some interesting views and start to look at the data a little bit here. So if I understand why the number for marketing is so much bigger, show me the relationships, you can then very easily see all the different services that have been mapped to marketing, right? And you can see then the projects, and you see there's this huge project happening here that they have part of the slice of. And then you can see which IT shared services that breaks down to. You can look at things the other way as well, and you can say, hey, I have $8.6 million being spent on application development in this quarter. I want to see where that's going. And so I can quickly see that that application development's being consumed, used towards the BlackBerry service, e-commerce, this ServiceNow instance, and Windows Mobile, and those things are being used by IT and marketing. So you can quickly see the ties and relationships even after you've created those allocations and get a view of that. It's the same type of view that you have in the out-of-the-box reports, but this is for your analyst who's in here on a regular basis. This is their workspace. It lets them know and be able to double-check that all the dollars tick and tie and that the relationships that they're expecting are set up correctly. I'm going to hide this. And in this little information button here, we can also get some more detail about any of these particular things. So you can see how this is set up. So you can see that this advanced call center shared service is set to manually roll up to the next segment. And remember, in our hierarchy, shared services rolls up to business services. And it's been set manually by percentage to go 80% by electronic messaging, 10% SAP, and 10% email. And so this number here is being divided by these percentages across these 3 business services. Adding a roll-up is as easy as saying, make this change. It's going to allow me to select what I want to do here. So maybe e-commerce has to have a piece, and this should only be 70%, and I could do 10% here. So if I have some percentages that are maybe based off of some other data set or based off of expert knowledge and interviews with the people who own those, then you can go in and you can manually set those to give you a very fast easy way to swag how your dollars are rolling up. I'm going to close this because I don't want to save those changes. If I roll it back up again, you can see that there are other roll-up methods, and we're going to spend a lot of time in this in the second session talking about how to do those scripted and weighted allocations. You can also do it equal. So if I set equal, and that would mean that it gets spread equally across all of the values in the segment that it rolls up to. Or I could say none, and it wouldn't allocate up at all. So perhaps there's a point where I want to load some data for maybe application development, but it gets held in my model until my new project management system gets implemented and I have data that I want to use to do that. By doing weighted and scripted is where we can leverage the data from other systems or from other modules in ServiceNow, tying together and leveraging the relationships of infrastructure to applications in your CMDB, or of project and the labor time and cost already associated with the project in the system. And so you can pull those in and leverage those automatically as well. Or it could just be a calculation where you're weighting something, where, let's say, for different types of workspaces, you know that your laptops are 1.5 times more expensive than your lightweight VDIs. And so you can start to create those calculated metrics and leverage those as well. So it's nice that you can grow this over time, go in, use your expert knowledge about how your IT organization runs, and put in manual or equal allocations where you don't have data to drive it, and then leverage the data for the places that you do. The things that you set as manual today can easily go in and change and update to leverage data as those other data sources mature. So you're not locking yourself in forever by making that decision. So I'm going to close this up. If I look one level up and do the information, you can show that I have not just the roll-ups, right? So this tells me that finance is using and consuming 100% of the bond trading account service, but I can then also, since there are accounts below it that roll up, I can see what those accounts are and see the roll-ups as well. So easy to go in and see what those are. It can also see the allocated buckets, right? So at this point, it's showing me here are the buckets that are loading in. So I've got a lot of labor, a little bit of general admin in here. These are views that is generally incredibly hard to get and to make decisions about. These are the kinds of things that if you're managing this data in spreadsheets or an Access system today, it could potentially be taking you man weeks or man months to answer this type of analysis. It's not uncommon for us to have customers tell us that their current processes take them 6 man weeks of time every month in order to get the manual Excel analytics that they need. The great thing about a system like this is that you set up your configurations and allocations, and then all you have to do is load the next month's financial, and if there's any external operational data, you load those in once a month or once a quarter if you're only doing quarterly analysis. Go through and check your data cleansing, check your bucketing. Then you're going to go into the review, where it will show you how your allocations flow. So you can see that 100% of our data is bucketed, and that our data comes in as both IT shared services and projects, and when we add those together, we can see that 100% of that is allocated up to business services, and 100% of that is allocated up to business units. Now, if you're just starting this process, it's not unusual that you don't get 100% all the way to the top the first time. And a lot of people will just stop because being able to get just up to an IT shared service and project view is more than they were able to do before. You might not have business services defined yet, and so we'll see a lot of people not use a business services segment, but use an application segment instead to get that app TCO. And that's what we're going to talk about in the next session. Once you're ready to go, you would click Allocate Expenses. I'm not going to click that one right now because that one does take just a little bit longer to run. And And that's what your work would be on a monthly basis. So instead of 6 man-weeks of people manipulating Excel spreadsheets and making phone calls, you've got, a day of making sure you've validated the data and loaded it in correctly, and then maybe a half a day of going through and validating your data in the system before you're ready to go out and check those out-of-the-box reports or any custom reports that you've configured. So the out-of-the-box reports in both Geneva and Helsinki are based off of the standard business ServiceNow reporting surface. So you can do the same kinds of normal configuration that you can. You can go in and edit these. You can add different widgets. You can make changes to the out-of-the-box reports and change names, those sorts of things. Or you can create entirely new dashboards and reports if you want to see roles by persona. You will likely end up doing, in addition to the out-of-the-box CIO dashboard, you may have a dashboard that's specific for different service owners. They want to see information about this particular just to their service, and different services sometimes have information that's important. It's not uncommon to find that infrastructure is very concerned with outside services and third-party vendors and hardware maintenance and depreciation, whereas app development groups are looking at labor and labor management. And so their dashboards might look a little bit different, but those are as easy as any other ServiceNow report to pull together and pull that information out of the tables that calculate when you click that little Allocate Now button. Our goal here is to get people comfortable with the application and its capabilities, to understand the power of leveraging financial management within ServiceNow, especially if you've got other modules already implemented, for providing the driving cost transparency both for external business communications as well as for internal IT cost management. In the next series, we'll get into how to add that app TCO layer if you don't have business services, and how to do some advanced scripting. And we'll talk about lots of tricks of the trade with using multiple models that you can do in the third session.